Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Justin corrected me last week because I'm not doing good, I'm doing well.
That's true. I'm happy to have taught something on this show for once.
So you gave up the life of fighting crime, Mike?
Yeah, I stopped doing good, and now I'm just doing well.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. And Justin, how well are you doing?
Like on a scale of 1 to 10?
Let's just do 1 to 3.
4.
Perfect. Awesome. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm doing excellent.
3
For
means
real.
the worst, though, so 4 probably means
crap.
you're doing
Okay, then
less than that.
0 or -1. I don't know.
Oh, man.
I don't know how this works.
This got complicated quick.
It did, and if this is your first time joining us, this is the Casual Cinecast. We like to start off every episode talking about what is on our minds, which is usually the media that we've been watching. Then we move into our feature review. This week we are reviewing the new Netflix film, Triple Frontier.
The sequel to Double Frontier.
That's right.
Which was
This
also a
time,
sequel to just
you
Frontier.
have triple the frontiers.
All the frontiers. Also, don't forget that each month we review a film from the Criterion Collection, which is voted on by you, the listeners. So go check out our latest episode on The Princess Bride and look for our next episode on Safety Last.
And if you want to vote in our polls to help choose the next Criterion film or want to send us questions on the film that we're watching each week for us to answer on the show, you can send those on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can also send your questions to our email, casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And of course, as always, if you like the show, go ahead, give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Let people know that we're a good show, help people find us. And then also, if you're not already, subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you listen to podcasts on.
Yeah, please do. We thank you in advance. And you'll thank yourself as well.
But not in advance, later.
No, probably
Many
only
years.
after you realized how great of a decision you made.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Are we ready to move into what is on our mind?
I sure
So
am.
ready.
All right, let's do it.
You on the mark!
All right, so Mike, tell us what is on your mind.
All right. So I haven't really watched much in the way of movies this last week. It's mostly been TV shows. The new episodes of Arrested Development dropped on Netflix. So I'll talk about those a little bit now, but I'll save most of my thoughts or specific thoughts, at least until someone else can see them.
Yeah, which I'll be doing within the next week, I'm sure. I almost forgot that they were coming out, but so I haven't really got to them yet, but
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah. Well, I know, Justin, you were not a big fan of the first half of season 5.
True.
And what I will say shortly here is that I think these episodes are stronger than those, but it's still very much the same season with the same tone and like unevenness. That said, I still liked it. I also enjoyed the first half of season 5 more than you, so take that for what you will. I also enjoyed season 4 when it came out. But even as someone who likes these reboot seasons, I can say that the show is not what it once was. But that said, I think the finale for this season, and probably the show, really worked for me. It's just the right amount of dark and funny that this show likes to balance. And I think it's worth it, even if you're not really enjoying, or if you didn't really enjoy the first part of season 5. I would say finish it, just because there probably won't be any more Arrested Development episodes after this. And I think the ending of season 5 will probably upset a lot of people, but maybe not. But I think it's a strong conclusion to an uneven season. So I think Netflix should probably just pack it in here, though, and maybe call it quits, which is probably their plan. Because I think if they do somehow manage to get another season of Arrested Development out of this, with the same actors coming back and not having to green screen them, I doubt it would be a better conclusion to the story than what they managed to give us in the last episode of season 5.
Yeah, I kind of would be interested in seeing what Mitch Hurwitz could do next. You know, I feel like he's been doing Arrested Development for so long.
He's done a lot of shows in between there that just get canceled. I think Arrested Development's the only show that I think that has been like well received, or once was. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Did he do the show that's on HBO with Julia Louis-Dreyfus? Is it VIP or
Veep?
Veep. That's it.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think he has much to do. I mean, he may have worked on it in some capacity, but I don't think he's a creative force on that show at all.
Okay, I thought I remember seeing some. Maybe it's like other people from Arrested Development that got over. I know Tony Hale's in it, but I thought like people working behind the scenes were some of the same Arrested Development folk, but I could be wrong.
I actually think the Veep is done by the same guy that did In the Loop, and he did what was the movie that he made last year?
Death of Stalin.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you're right. I think I'm getting them mixed up, but that's okay. Sometimes people get mixed up. It's all right. Yeah. So I have watched like the first 2 episodes, and I will say that I remember enjoying those more than I remember enjoying most of what I watched of the first half of season 5. So I'm excited to continue on.
Don't get me wrong. There are definitely some laughs.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I laughed more than once every episode. Here's what I will say, though, and I would love to talk more about this whenever you eventually do see it, but you mentioned this whenever we kind of reviewed Season 5, Part 1. You said the show not being at the 22-minute runtime is really to its detriment, and I completely agree with you. I think the finale is like 47 minutes long, and it works because it's the finale, you know? But most of these episodes are between like 28 minutes and like 36 minutes.
Oh, jeez.
And man, it drags, and I think it's not even to me it's not even the quality of the jokes and the writing that's not up to snuff. It's the editing and the pacing. Like in seasons 1 through 3, I remember plenty of jokes that didn't land, but you're moving on within a second after a joke doesn't land. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas like in these Netflix shows, even the bad jokes have time to breathe. And that's not necessarily good because these characters aren't deep. They're sitcom characters.
Right.
We need breezier pacing. Like I think if he went through and did like a remix of season 5, the way he did a remix of season 4, and disciplined himself to get the 22-minute episodes like he did with that remix, I think it would make the show better, to be honest with you. But I don't see why he would do that. It makes no sense. But personally speaking, I just wish that season 5, instead of 16 30-something minute episodes, I wish it had been like 22-minute episodes.
Yeah, there's something about conditioning too that just like you have that feeling when you're watching sitcoms, because we've been watching sitcoms that were the 22-minute episode length forever now. And Arrested Development started that way. It's different for another show that comes out on Netflix that can be a different length, right? But we're so conditioned to that time length that you have that sense of like this episode is almost over, even if you're not watching the clock.
Yeah, totally. Exactly. And the thing is, what Mitch Hurwitz is doing is he's taking advantage of the streaming structure, right? He's taking advantage of the fact that like everyone's going to be able to binge this. So season 4 and season 5 of Arrested Development weren't meant to be as relentlessly laugh out loud funny as seasons 1 through 3. They're meant to be like onions that you peel back and find layers upon rewatching. Problem is, you have to have fun your initial watch to want to rewatch. So ultimately, I do have fun. I think seasons 4 and 5 are both good, but I think there's a very clear difference. And personally speaking, I like the story beats that happen and the way everything concludes, but tighter is my main concern here.
Yeah, makes sense. I will watch this soon, and we'll talk here or independently.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the finale. I talked to a friend of the show at Buddy Cattell on Twitter. He doesn't really like the Netflix reboots too much, but even he liked the finale. So overall, nice. Pretty interesting. So that's all I've got for Arrested Development for now. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was a show called Star Wars Resistance.
Yes, we've talked about this a couple times.
Yeah, we have. It just ended its first season. So that's kind of the reason I wanted to mention it again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, of course, the new animated Star Wars show from Disney. And it literally, I think just this week, wrapped up its final episode of season 1. And guys, this cartoon is a lot of fun. It's colorful. The animation is unique and cool. It takes a lot of inspiration from anime, which is cool. And it kind of adds a new aesthetic to the Star Wars universe. The show is very much a kid's show still. That's what it is. But like most things Star Wars related, it's also made for older audiences to enjoy. And I think this is the most enjoyable first season of a Star Wars cartoon I've seen, hands down. There have been 2 other animated Star Wars shows that I've watched. I think that's the only ones that exist. But they have felt like a chore to get through their first seasons to where, the show eventually finds its legs and it gets good. This show does not do that. It's good from the beginning. And anyways, this takes place about 6 months before the movies. It's about a spy recruited by Poe Dameron, who is voiced by Oscar Isaac, to hang out on a fuel planet, like a fuel station, gas station type planet, and spy on the First Order, who at this point is sort of like a fringe group on the edges of the galaxy that most people aren't paying attention to. And so by the time season 2 rolls around, it will very likely overtake The Last Jedi, since The Last Jedi takes place like 2 days after The Force Awakens or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it premieres in October, season 2, it will actually kind of lead up into episode 9.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of a cool way to expand upon the lore of the current sequel trilogy era, It's a very binge-worthy show, and I think you guys should give it a shot. It's really, really breezy and fun.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before, and I've watched the first 3 or 4 episodes, and I want to get back into it for sure.
It really picks up at the end. The other times we talked about it, I was like, it's good, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But after the first season officially ended, I can say that it's a blast cartoon, man. It's pretty fun.
That's really great to hear, and especially with Disney Plus coming out, and I feel like Disney Plus is going to be full of these types of things. That it's good content, and hopefully, Disney Plus will be the same.
I've watched the first half of the first episode about 7 times because I always put it on late at night. And I always fall asleep or, get distracted by something else. And then I always pause it. So I've yet to finish the first episode, but that first half is good. I can testify having seen it 6 or 7 times. It doesn't get boring.
No, I imagine it wouldn't. What do you guys think of the animation?
I like the cel shaded. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what this is called. It definitely is cel shaded for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very flat looking, and at least in terms of the characters.
Right.
There's depth within the scene, but it's kind of each character is kind of on its own flat layer in a sense.
Yeah, color wise.
Yeah, which looks cool. I like it.
And I think it's definitely better than the other 2 Star Wars.
Oh, it's not ugly. That was my biggest problem with the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, This show is just ugly. I don't like looking at Obi-Wan Kenobi in this show. He looks like a nutcracker.
Because of his goatee?
Yeah, his beard. It's like a square and it's got lines all through it. I don't know. It's just badly animated. Well, although I have seen... have you guys seen the trailer for the 7th season of the Clone Wars that Disney's bringing back after all these years?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Those same models are with newer animation, I guess in the years since then. And I guess Disney's just pouring a lot of money into season 7. The very brief trailer you see of the Clone Wars animated show looks really pretty, better than it used to. So it might be salvageable, but basically, the Clone Wars is ugly, and Resistance is not, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Well, let me apologize to any Nutcracker enthusiasts out there. We're not saying that Nutcrackers are ugly, I don't think. We're just saying that we don't want our Star Wars characters to look like Nutcrackers necessarily. So Nutcrackers are okay in my book.
Okay, well, thanks for making that distinction, Justin. I apologize to all those Nutcracker enthusiasts out there.
We got a lot of hate mail.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's it. You probably won't hear me talk about it again I can't think of any other reasons to talk about Star Wars Resistance after this, but I wanted to champion the show because it's still pretty small. I feel like a lot of people don't know about it or just assume it's like really, really childish, which I guess it is, but that's not always a bad thing.
So until season 2 then, I guess.
Yeah, until October. I can't think of any other reasons. Okay, so Chris, what is on your mind this week?
Yeah, I saw a couple of things. The first one is Captive State. I saw it. It's a movie about an occupying alien force on Earth. It stars John Goodman and Ashton Sanders from Moonlight. He was the middle Moonlight character.
Okay.
And it's directed by Rupert Wyatt, who did Rise of the Planet of the Apes. This film really reminded me of like a World War II occupied France movie, because there's this resistance that's fighting back against the aliens, and there's actually this really cool sequence in about the middle of the movie where all the different characters, they're trying to enact a plan, and as they have all these little clues that they give each other because they don't want to reveal their identities to each other, so that they, if they're one of them's captured, they can't tell who the other person is. And it's really interesting as they slide through that, and you watch kind of the mousetrap go off as they enact this plan, and I thought that was really interesting. However, like, the movie didn't look super great. It kind of had this 90s feel to it that kind of reminded me of Eagle Eye and Enemy of the State, and that blue-gray color to it, so it didn't look super great there. And the other thing was there wasn't really, I think it's because they spent so much time showing the resistance and all the different characters of the resistance, I don't ever feel really emotionally connected to any one of them. I mean, I feel emotionally connected to John Goodman just because he's John Goodman, but yeah, ultimately it kind of left me wanting some sort of emotional base that I could take off from. So I think it's a solid movie that it just doesn't quite scratch 3 stars. It's like a 2.5 movie that could have been better. I feel like the world was really fleshed out well, like the aliens. There's like these amazing flocks of birds that are actually like cameras, just as they fly through the air, but they look like flocks of birds, and it's pretty cool that what they look like. So the world is fleshed out too. It's just they didn't flesh out any of the characters. They didn't take time to flesh out these characters very well. So,
bummer.
Yeah. Kind of bummed out, and especially with John Goodman and Ashton Sanders in it. I really was hoping that they could do more, or they're both really great actors, but I don't think either one of them are ever given enough to do. And Vera Farmiga, once again, is in this film too, but it's such a minor role. She does well with what she has, but she kind of, it's not, none of the actors are given enough to do or to make me emotionally attached to them, so... Yeah.
Is this an action film? Like, does it get actiony?
I would say more suspense along the lines of like intrigue, like spies and stuff like that.
Okay.
It's nowhere near it, but I was reminded of Army of Shadows to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's not the comparison I was expecting.
That's a high bar to think about this film on.
Right, but is the World War II occupied France, and then you have this resistance trying to fight back. And that's basically what I was reminded of in that way.
Like Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was going to say, I think it's really funny that in this review you've compared the film to both Eagle Eye and Army of Shadows.
Yeah, imagine if Army of Shadows looked like Eagle Eye, and instead of Nazis was aliens, then you'd have Captive State.
I feel like I've seen the movie now.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my first thing. Unless you guys have any other questions.
That's like a not recommend then.
Yeah,
sounds like
you can skip it. I think the world building's good, but don't go see it in the theater. You can Netflix it later.
Or if you're like me, sign up for the Netflix Blu-ray plan. I just did that.
Yeah,
me too. I did that last week.
As someone who wants to keep doing a movie podcast but doesn't want to pay for individual rentals, this seems like the best bang for my buck.
Yeah,
it does.
Pretty smart.
Yeah, so I will definitely wait for a Blu-ray or something of that, because even with my like AMC pass, I really did not want to go see this movie. Like I just didn't want to drive to the theater and leave my house to go sit 2 hours and dedicate it to that movie, you know?
Someone has to bring the movie to you.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. I was hoping for a lot more. Expectations were... I mean, and I didn't really know much, but John Goodman... The last John Goodman sci-fi movie I'd seen was 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I was hoping for that.
Yeah, well, John Goodman's on a lot of crap.
Yeah.
I hope you're not including the Roseanne TV show, whatever that's called now. The Connors.
The Connors.
I'm just kidding. I don't know if that show's good or not. I'm just making jokes.
Well, I haven't even seen the reboot of Roseanne, but I remember my mom watched Roseanne when I was a kid, like when it was originally on, and I hated it then.
That doesn't seem to.
So
I don't think you're the target audience for.
No, I don't think I ever was. Reboot or otherwise.
All right. So the other thing that I watched was actually it's on Adult Swim, and have either of you guys seen Tim and Eric?
Not my cup of tea. Yes, I have.
Portions of it which I did not enjoy.
Yeah. So I haven't ever seen Tim and Eric, but the thing that I'm about to talk about stars Tim Heidecker, which is, I think he's from the Tim and Eric show. Anyways, it's called On Cinema at the Cinema, and it's a TV show that actually started off as a podcast. And it's shot like Siskel and Ebert, and each episode's about 10 minutes long as they review these films. The two main characters are these amateur movie critics that are pretty big buffoons. They passive aggressively attack each other while they're doing the show, trying to one up each other. Like they rate the movies by popcorn buckets, and so they try to give more popcorn buckets than the other one did if they just to show that they like the movie better. And then they'll throw in like a soda pop, as well. Through the seasons, there's like 8 to 10 episodes in a season, and it's been going on for like 10 seasons now, and I just found it, and you can watch it all on YouTube. But each season kind of has an arc to it, and the characters will go through different things. Like one of the characters is trying to watch 500 movies in 500 days for the Guinness Book of World Records. It's pretty hilarious. I really enjoy it, especially because it's in these short 10-minute clips. So it's Tim Heidecker and George Turkington that play these two characters, and they have this segment. It's where George Turkington's character will pull out an old VHS. And he pulls out just the most mediocre movies possible, and they're on VHS at that, because he doesn't want to upgrade. He's got a lot of movies on VHS, so he doesn't want to upgrade to DVD yet. But he like pulls out Multiplicity, and he's like how great the movie is. Anyways, a lot of it is pretty cool, and since we actually do a podcast, some of it actually struck home. Like the Tim Heidecker character can never pronounce any of the characters' names.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I felt very personally attacked at that moment. But yeah, it's pretty great, and you guys should give it a chance. It's pretty funny, and it's fun to watch, especially if you like Siskel and Ebert or you've listened to podcasts, because it's got that quality and that parodying of those elements. Anyways, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I saw once you added it to the show notes, I actually looked up an episode of it like earlier today, and it definitely seems like an Adult Swim show. Yeah,
it's definitely
it's it's just definitely got that same exact voice that like Adult Swim has. Like Tim and Eric, like you said, like if that show floats your boat, this is right up your alley. I don't know that it's for me. It seems like and this is probably an unpopular opinion I'm going to say here, so I apologize in advance if anyone listening gets upset. It reminded me of a more tolerable Red Letter Media. Like, have you ever seen Red Letter Media, Chris?
No, I'm not familiar with Red Letter Media.
Yeah, I have, and I'm pretty sure I know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, it's basically like it's a channel designed around talking about movies, but the hosts are more concerned with like giving you skits and being cute,
right,
and like witty than they are actually discussing the movies.
Right.
And like this one you're talking about seems a little better natured than that, I guess, because at least what I saw. But also the episode I saw was over Solo. It was what I clicked on, and they didn't even talk about Solo at all. So
right. I mean, that
so
happens.
I was like, I don't even know what to make of this show. This isn't even like the one thing I clicked on is not at all representative of what they talked about for 10 minutes. So I'm completely perplexed by this show.
Yeah, is that part of the joke?
Yeah.
I think it is part of the joke, but also titles don't mean anything now. And like now I'm like, well, I can just click on any random episode because who knows what I'm going to get.
Right. And I think it benefits you to watch them in order, because of each season kind of has its own arc. I mean, the thing that I like about it
I was really
a lot,
confused. I went down and looked at all the comments, and everyone was like just commenting inside jokes on YouTube.
Right, yeah.
About the other episodes, and I was like, this is clearly not something I understand.
There is a lot of lore to dive into, and I think they even respond on Twitter and stuff in character, which is almost a little bit too much for me. I don't need to go that far down this rabbit hole. But the thing I do like about it that I think they do well is this amateur. They're kind of poking fun at amateur podcasts and like us, or even the amateur YouTube show where they talk, because they'll talk about a movie, but they won't really say anything about it. They'll be like, this movie is great, and unfortunately it doesn't have any big name stars in it, so I'm going to have to hold back a popcorn, but ultimately it's great, so I'm going to add in another bag of popcorn. So they don't really say anything about it, about the films. And then the other thing that's great is the dynamic between the two of them, and how they're always trying to one up each other.
Right. So it's not a show you would recommend if you're actually interested in a show about movies.
Oh, right. Exactly.
It's a show first and foremost, I think.
Yeah, it's a show. It's a skit show.
I wouldn't even say it's about movies. I would say what it is parodying is shows like ours, or the YouTube shows.
But is that the point of it, or do they actually is every episode just another parody of the thing they've been parodying all along, or are there ever any real conversations amongst all that joking
about film?
Yeah, about anything, about anything other than parody.
Probably not, as far as I've gone. Though, no, I wouldn't. It's definitely there's not anything deeper than what you're getting, the parody.
Yeah, and that sounds like Adult Swim.
Yeah, it's just something I found and I enjoyed. I don't know how much longer.
Yeah, it's definitely entertaining. I do agree with you though that the hosts were funny. If I had known the inside jokes and known what was going on, I probably would have laughed, because their delivery and their timing is all really funny. I just was expecting some conversations about movies.
Yeah.
So I think as long as you know what it is,
yeah,
then it's good,
Yeah, I'll check it out. I'm pretty sure it sounds kind of fun and easy to watch. I think you said they were 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, start with season 1. That's the main thing as they dive into it. And you can even find, I was listening to a podcast. It's really hard to find their podcast. I think they're on behind some sort of paywall or something, but you can still find some of them. And the podcasts are pretty funny too, and they're longer.
Yeah, I can imagine the podcast would be funny.
My only concern is all the stories we read when we were covering This Is Spinal Tap for the Criterion episodes, and it was about the real bands that watch Spinal Tap, and we're I don't know, that was kind of a horror movie. That's not that funny. It's hitting a little too close to home.
Yeah.
I will say that there's times where I was like, oh, yikes, I got to be careful about saying something like that, or there's definitely some of it hit close to home.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing this week. Justin, how about you?
Well, much like Mike, I have not been watching a lot of movies this week. It's been a pretty busy week for me. The one thing I have been watching this week is something I've been watching over the past, month and a half to 2 months, and I haven't talked about it on the show yet because I wanted to get, further into it. And that is the Netflix show. Well, I guess it's not a Netflix show, but it's on Netflix. It's called The Great British Baking Show. Are you guys familiar with this one?
I sure am.
I guess I've heard of it. I don't know. Maybe I haven't. It just seems like a really obvious name.
Yeah, if you've heard the name and you heard me just say it, you know what the show's about and where it takes place. But Chris, have you watched it?
When my sister was here, we watched a bunch of cooking shows over the holidays.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the Great British Baking Show is one of them. I have heard about it quite a bit.
Yeah, I heard about it a lot before I watched it. I'll just say quickly for anybody who doesn't know what it's about. It's a reality cooking show set in England. They bring in 12 bakers each season. They do 3 baking challenges each week. And at the end of each episode, they send someone home. And on the 10th week, they like crown a champion. There is no like prize. There's no prize money or big reward like American Idol gives, like, you know, a record contract. They just get the crown, basically bragging rights. And the reason that I started watching it was my fiance. She was watching this and I wasn't particularly interested in it, as you can probably imagine, but I sat down to watch it with her one time, like finish an episode with her. And afterwards I was like, okay, that's pretty good. I like it. So I agreed to watch one more. And then pretty much from there, I've been hooked on it. I actually really, really love this show. And I'm not one, as you guys can probably both attest to, I'm not one for reality shows or really cooking shows.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. And so far we've gone through about 4 seasons. I think there's 6 on there, but the thing that I wanted to point out about it and wanted to talk about it, and I guess make my case to anybody who maybe was like me and isn't interested in the show, is that this show is super pleasant. There's no head-to-head competition where bakers go after each other. Even like the final episode, there's 3 bakers competing. So it's not like you never get down to this one-on-one sort of thing. There's no mean-spirited characters that they bring in. There's no parts of the show where they talk bad about each other or like undercut each other. A lot of times they end up helping each other when someone's struggling and they have time. And they all talk and they joke around. The hosts talk and joke around with them all while they're baking. And the whole time you just get to watch people make like mostly really good looking desserts. And occasionally they fail, but usually you feel bad for them. And it's, I don't know, it's a really, really pleasant show. And I think the key thing, and this is something we actually talked about before we started recording, Mike, you made the comment talking about the Star Wars subreddit, how you don't understand some people in there that just like to go in there and complain, right? And like, you like to spend your time on things you like, right? Or not actively disliking something.
Right.
I don't want to misquote you.
Don't dedicate so much time and energy to things you don't like.
Yeah, exactly. And this show is kind of like the antithesis of that, because it's like, you don't spend any time hating anybody. They don't have unlikable characters. They don't have any sort of negative interaction with each other, right? So it's like, I'm just sitting there the whole time, like for every episode, just enjoying everything I'm watching, right? And so it's very like zen and centering for me to watch it. Like if I've had like a long day at work,
right,
or I'm not feeling like focusing on something, or I can't focus on something, I can put it on and just watch it and just like decompress. And I find that really amazing. And there's not that many things that I've come across that are like that. Cause even like a lot of like sitcoms and comedy shows are kind of rooted in unlikable characters, or characters doing unlikable things, but they're funny. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like the best thing that I can say about the show, is that it's super pleasant. And I would recommend, if you need something to decompress at the end of the day, like
empty calories.
The show is great. Yes. But yeah. And I don't know that I've sold anybody on it who's listening, or either of you guys on it. And I totally get it. I'd say the only warning that I have is if you're trying to diet and you have any sort of sweet tooth, not a great show to watch during that, because you'll have the urge for sure to like run out to like the grocery store and buy a cake. And it's not a good idea to have a whole cake just around regularly.
Well, then what you need to do is eat a cake and then watch it.
That's kind of the same. It's like the same problem, but in reverse, right?
Well, you know, I can't help you.
I feel like that'll curb your need for a cake while you watch it if you've already eaten a cake.
Well, that was my joke, but then
right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, that's the if you're gonna eat a cake, you should get the urge and the craving for the cake, to let that build up and then give in and go get one, and then the cake's way more satisfying than if you eat it first.
Or on contrary, you could eat the cake, then you're a cake professional. Then, whenever you're watching it, you can better judge the cakes and how delicious they may or may not look based on your newfound expertise.
Is that like...
It's true. I do feel like a cake expert.
Is that like eating your cake and having it too?
Sure.
I don't know, but I feel like I could judge a cake much better than I could like 2 months ago.
So educational.
I don't feel like I could bake a cake, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you any closer to learning how to bake one?
No. I watch it and I'm like, oh, there's no way I would screw all of that up. So it's not even informing your brain a lot. Like there's little things, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's literally just empty calories.
Yeah.
Well, not literally, I guess, but you know what I mean. It means nothing. Like there's no value in it.
Yeah.
But that's not always a bad thing. Like sometimes sometimes you just want to literally entertain yourself with nothing else, you know? I need to stop using the word literally so much, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you're right. It's not a bad thing. And if you need something simple, something to like genuinely switch your brain off and just like enjoy something and care about it and decompress, watch it.
I think that's all of our recommendations this week.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think we're all kind of in the empty calorie phase. I don't know what you call it, but basically like it's all pretty light-hearted stuff this week on our What's on Our Minds.
Except for Nazi resistance-esque space alien.
That's true.
Captive state.
That's true.
That doesn't sound like switching my brain off.
Even Arrested Development's not necessarily switching your brain off because you got to be paying attention all the time. Otherwise, you're missing like 6 jokes.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Well, but so that's it. I didn't watch a lot this week. I'll have more next week. More substance, more calories that'll have calorie content.
That will get you no closer to learning how to bake a cake.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So, all right. I think we can move on.
Okay. So I guess now it's time to move into our review of Triple Frontier.
Let's do it.
We're gonna get Gabriel Martin Larrea, head of one of the biggest drug cartels. I've got estimates he's got over $75 million in cash.
If we're not gone forever, after you make your move, we're dead.
You cannot go back to your normal life after tonight. You guys need to own the fact that what we're about to do is criminal.
Everyone to the office, right now.
Okay, so as always, before we get into Triple Frontier, just want to let you know we will be speaking generally about the film at first. We won't be giving any spoilers away. And before we do get into spoilers, we'll give you a spoiler alert so that you can pause the podcast, go see the film, come back, finish listening, and then tell us how awesome we are after and how much you agree with us and think we're cool.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Triple Frontier, directed by J.C. Chandor, starring Ben Affleck, Oscar Isaac, and Charlie Hunnam, and Pedro Pascal. I just added that. That wasn't on the notes. IMDb synopsis says, loyalties are tested when 5 former Special Forces operatives reunite to steal a drug lord's fortune, unleashing a chain of unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, if you guys have no objections, I'll go ahead and start us off.
Go ahead,
please.
Mike.
Take the wheel.
All right, let's do it. So this is a film I didn't know very much about, other than it had a lot of talent behind it. Obviously, we mentioned most of the cast just now, but I think it's also worth noting that it's written by Mark Bull, who has also written some pretty interesting stuff, like The Hurt Locker and 0 Dark 30, and In the Valley of Elah with Tommy Lee Jones, which I enjoyed way back in the day. And then, of course, it's directed by J.C. Chandor, who we recently talked about in our listener-selected review for A Most Violent Year. So he has directed some pretty interesting stuff as well. And really, based on the talent alone, that's all I really needed to know to want to see the movie.
Mm-hmm.
When this film began, we start off with some Metallica playing.
For Whom the Bell Tolls.
Indeed. And it was about dudes going to do dude stuff and talking about brotherhood and etc. And I thought to myself, oh no. This is not going to be for me. This is too macho and lame, basically, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
However, pretty quickly I realized that this movie is not what I thought it was going to be, and I found myself really enjoying it. I don't think it's great, but I think there are some genuinely tense sequences where I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I think the action sequences are also filmed well, and they're tight. I think the movie looks pretty good. If you ask me, it doesn't feel like it's shot on green screen for 80% of it, like some Netflix movies do, you know? It looks like they went on location and filmed some pretty crazy places. the actual filming of this movie probably wasn't very fun at all, I can imagine. Just hanging out in jungles and on mountains and stuff.
Sounds sweaty.
Yeah, it sounds very unpleasant. The film really comes alive for me in the second half. I think this is where a lot of the themes and the ideas that we have been building towards start to pay off. There are some ideas of humanity and the value of human life kind of being explored here. There are also a lot more quiet moments for characters to reflect on their actions than I ever would have thought there would be in a movie like this. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that. I don't know if the movie leaves me with anything super profound, but that's okay. I think the fact that they are saying anything at all, or trying to say anything with this movie, is very refreshing to me. So I recommend it. What say you, Justin?
Well, I think we're not too far off from each other in terms of opinions and how we feel about the movie, except for maybe I enjoyed some of the music in it. I recognized one of the songs, the song I really like. Oh, it's whenever we're meeting the brothers and we go to the UFC fight, they played Pantera's Walk for a little while, which is the only Pantera song I like, and I really like it.
Well,
so
for the record,
I was pretty hyped on that.
Yeah, for the record, I didn't dislike the music. I just thought to myself, I'm getting into something that I'm not loving.
Right,
yeah,
right.
The music says something about the film that
Well,
you didn't like.
But I'll let Justin talk here in a minute. But more than anything, I think the film says something more about the characters, because the Metallica at the beginning seems more like diegetic music, like music they would be listening to.
Yeah,
yeah,
and that's what that type of music is, and that's why it's in there. It's a very marine style.
Exactly, like dude soldiers, masculine stuff. So it makes sense that they would listen to it. But I was hoping that the movie didn't have that tone, and I think it didn't. But
yeah,
I'm sorry. Proceed.
No, I'm with you. And the other thing I want to say is, do you remember when we first saw the trailer for the film? I think it came out in 2008-ish. Stop Loss with Ryan Phillippe and Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and the trailer. The song in the trailer is Bodies by Drowning Pool.
Oh, yes.
And I think we were both, every time we saw that trailer in theaters, we both looked at each other and we're like, oh. And then we watched the movie and it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So anyways, I couldn't help but think of that while watching the beginning of this movie. But anyways, this movie is also not my type of movie. Watching the trailer and maybe the first, I don't know, maybe even like 40 minutes of this movie, but maybe that's being harsh, but maybe generously like the first 15 minutes of this movie is that it seemed very much like a movie that someone who is very into Call of Duty and those like tactical warfare shooter games would find really, really cool. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. That's just not something that I am inherently interested in, right?
Correct. Yeah, same here.
But I did actually find the way that they shot those sequences, and I don't know if this is the point that you were making, Mike, but you said that they were... I don't remember the word you used, but it made me think that you thought that they were not overdone action sequences. They weren't super long. They were kind of succinct and to the point.
Yeah, breezy, and well-paced, shot well.
Yeah, and so I found those sequences pretty compelling. I found the tactical stuff they talked about at times pretty interesting, but ultimately I'm kind of where you are, where I think I enjoyed it and I enjoyed watching it, but it's not great, and I didn't love it. I think there are some performance issues here and there with it. They're mostly good, but there's a couple that just really stuck out like a sore thumb to me at times where like it took me out of the movie. And also I think the writing at points, it feels like the characters are explaining stuff to us in an expository way that didn't feel natural.
I wish they would have explained what the hell Triple Frontier means at some point.
That's a thing too. No one said the title in the movie either.
Well, I don't want them to say the title. That's lame. But I'd like them to explain what a triple frontier is if you're gonna call the movie that. Because at first I was like, "This is about three dudes who are like," I thought it was gonna be like Double Trouble or like, you know, to be like some '90s movie where it's like two Jean-Claude Van Dammes are gonna like cause too much mischief, you know?
Yeah, I have an idea of what triple frontier means, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But anyways, and those are kind of my big complaints is performance and writing. You know, the big thing, I guess, and this, it's not necessarily a complaint because I don't always need this. And maybe it's just me expecting more from J.C. Chandor after watching Most Violent Year and having a lot to pull out of that film. I think there's not much for me to pull away from this film and think about later. And I definitely struggle right now to think of anything that would get me to want to watch this movie again on my own. Like if someone wants to watch it, I'd probably be like, okay, it's good. It's enjoyable enough to watch, but I can't imagine going back on my own and being like, I really want to watch Triple Frontier again, like not even 20 years from now.
I feel like it's a good movie to watch with like a dad. Like if you watch movies with your dad,
right?
It's like that's how I would see myself watching it again. Is like if my dad ever wanted to watch a movie and I was just at his house and we had Netflix and I'm not gonna be like, let's watch Roma.
Right.
I'll watch this with my dad before I'll watch something else. So the fact that it's like a good macho movie kind of thing, I think there's value there. Yeah,
I think so. It's just basically I think that also means it doesn't leave me thinking about the film very much, which it's only that kind of gives it a certain ceiling. But that's pretty much my thoughts on the movie. I'm kind of at a very, very soft recommend if you're into action films is basically where I'm at on it, or military films.
Yeah,
I would say don't worry.
But I would say honestly, maybe if you're into drama as well, because there's not a lot of, there's some action in this movie, but I would say it's more of like a character action movie. Like it's very character based. But anyway, I'm sorry, Chris, talk. Yeah. I apologize.
I think I'm right there with you guys. I think my expectations for the film were, much like you guys. We had just watched Most Violent Year, and the same writer of Zero Dark 30 and Hurt Locker. I was, pretty excited, and the cast was pretty stellar, pretty solid. And so I was excited about it. I didn't watch a trailer, so I didn't really necessarily know what it was going to be about, except for a little bit of a heist movie. I like the idea that these characters are taking the training that they learned from the military and using it to further their own agendas. And I think that there's there's an interesting moral gray area that applies to them once they start using the skills they were taught by the military for their own agenda. It's one thing when the government's telling you to do it, but it's another when you're doing it to further your own interests.
That's like the first scene with Charlie Hunnam.
Yeah,
it's like don't go out there and sell your gun.
Right. I think you guys are right. I think the film looks really great. Some of the sequences that they shoot in location down there in South America look gorgeous. There's a couple of cool action set pieces, towards the beginning of the film that I really enjoyed. That Call of Duty analogy certainly popped in my head as I was watching it. I like the acting quite a bit, and I'll be interested to hear what parts of it you didn't enjoy, Justin. Ultimately, I think I like both the writer and the director, and I think that they both like delving into these morally gray characters, and also the effects of military service on people. While I enjoy it, I just don't ever think it reaches the heights of either one of their previous films, just like you guys were kind of saying. But it's it's a solid 3, a solid film. I do think that there might be some rewatchability in the way the characters make decisions and how they go from gray to good and good to they kind of switch they move around in that gray area a lot, and I found that interesting. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
All right, cool. So actually, one of the first things I wanted to ask you guys is I have written here, what did you think of the performances here? Did anyone not work for you? I agree with Chris. Most of the performances did work for me. I had some problems with Ben Affleck specifically at a couple times, but no one else. I think Charlie Hunnam was really good here. I think he's kind of the MVP maybe in this movie. And Oscar Isaac's always good. But Justin, who did not work for you?
Interesting that you say Charlie Hunnam was the MVP.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
Because his performance was tough for me to get into and buy at times. And some of it I felt like I could hear him performing an accent. And sometimes I felt like I heard his accent slip, particularly scenes where he had to be very excited and not like happy excited, but, very animated and yell and be very intense. And I don't know. I just, from the word go, I was like, it just didn't sound right to me.
Yeah, I feel like that is a complaint about Charlie Hunnam no matter what he's in, like that accent. I don't know that I noticed any of that during this film, but I certainly have noticed that with him, especially in Sons of Anarchy, the stuff that when I've watched that.
See, I think with me, Charlie Hunnam took a very long time to grow on me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, including this movie, there are 2 movies I have seen where I actually like him. I think Sons of Anarchy was something I could never get into.
Yeah.
Just not my thing at all. Wasn't he in the first Pacific Rim? Was that
he
him?
was.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, no charisma there, in my opinion. I agree that he is better whenever he doesn't have to do his American accent. However, in this movie, I didn't hear it personally. I actually thought he did pretty good, personally speaking. But then again, that's also maybe because I'm coming from a place of like, he's only impressed me once. So
Yeah.
I go in not being impressed with him generally. And so he can usually sink no lower than I already like where he starts out for me.
Yeah.
But based on this movie and Lost City of Z, which are the last 2 things I've seen him in, I like him.
Did you guys ever see Undeclared?
No.
No.
It's
The show?
Yeah, the Judd Apatow show that got
No,
canceled
no.
after one season. Charlie Hunnam was in that. He was pretty good.
Yeah.
I saw the first episode of it.
Yeah. I think the only thing I've seen him in is Green Street Hooligans.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
I
a
like
couple
that.
other things.
Oh,
but he
man.
had-
Okay, all right.
He's quite good in that. I mean, I like that
forgot
movie.
about that movie. Damn, I haven't seen that movie since like,
Since it came out.
whenever
Yeah,
that movie
like
came out, I guess. I
07.
forgot about that movie.
I will go with you that I think he has the most interesting character and the one who goes through the most interesting emotional scenes and emotional moments through the film. And in that sense, I think I'm with you that like his character, and he could seem like the MVP. I don't know how.
I think Oscar Isaac and Ben Affleck have the more interesting characters, at least journeys, especially Ben Affleck, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess I find his more subtle, and in that sense, it's more interesting because to me, Ben Affleck's journey seems very obvious from the first few scenes we have with him.
I mean, in broad strokes, it does, but I was genuinely surprised whenever he, well,
Yeah, I know we can't talk too much.
but I was surprised with how it goes. Like I was like predictable the whole time, yes, and then until it wasn't. So,
Gotcha.
What about the direction here? I mean, we talked about the performances a little bit. You know, we kind of mentioned how we thought it was filmed well earlier, but you said you were expecting more of J.C. Chandor, Justin. So, I mean, what do you think here? What was lacking, or what wasn't lacking? What was on point?
I mean, to me, I felt like this didn't have much of a different feel than other good films that I've seen in this genre. Like, I think it's a step down from Hurt Locker, but I think a lot of that has to do with the writing, even though it's the same writer. I don't think this film is as well written as Hurt Locker. It does remind me a lot of Zero Dark 30 and the way that I felt about watching that, which is a film I've had no desire to revisit as well. And so I guess based on the one J.C. Chandor film I've seen, which was Most Violent Year, that film is so intentionally shot and carefully paced.
You've seen Margin Call.
No, I haven't seen Margin
You
Call.
haven't seen Margin Call?
Yeah. But
Never mind.
I think this film, maybe it has the pacing down at times, but in terms of the actual filmmaking, it felt pretty standard for this type of movie, I guess, which compared to Most Violent Year, which is a very not standard sort of gangster film, I was disappointed, and maybe that's unfair.
Yeah, I think though that the set pieces, like there's a middle set piece, and I don't necessarily want to get into it, but I think that is shot and filled with tension. And I love the banter that they have back and forth, the way that they enter a room and they're it's hard to talk about without, but like they enter a room and as they clear the house, I kind of really like the way that's shot. I don't know. It reminds me of Zero Dark 30, in fact, the end of Zero Dark 30. And I thought Zero Dark 30, the end of that was filled with tension, and I enjoyed that middle section for sure. I don't know if good.
I mean, I think it's shot well, don't get me wrong. I just don't know that it's shot in a way that is elevated above other things in this genre.
I mean, fair enough. I can see that.
Which isn't a total complaint. It's not saying it's bad.
Yeah, so it sounds like we all recommend this movie. I'm sitting at a 3.5 out of 5. I think it sounds like I probably recommend it the most. Would you guys say that's accurate?
Yeah, I'm probably at a 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd give it a 3.25 stars if I could, but I'm kind of in the middle.
And a bucket of soda?
Yep.
All right, cool.
And 4 unpopped kernels of popcorn.
Nice.
All right, and with that, I think it's time to move into spoilers so we can kind of get into everything that we've been holding back on so far.
Yes.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
I'll tell you what, give me one cigarette you got up there. I'll tell you all about it. And here we go.
Okay, so now that we are in spoilers, do you guys like when Ben Affleck got shot? Because I really like that part, and I personally did not see it coming. Like, I figured there would be like a traditional gunfight type situation, and he might get shot, but I wasn't expecting it to be done in such like a
blunt
way that might traditionally kind of feel unsatisfying to some.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated the grimness of it, I guess.
Yeah, I was surprised by it because I thought that Ben Affleck's character and the way he was headed to being the bad guy.
Right. I thought he was going to cause a problem for his friends before, and they were going to have to like deal with him.
I guess they still did have to deal with him, but just in a different way.
Yeah, not in the way that they thought.
So in that way, it was surprising. But somehow, was that what you weren't surprised by, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I knew going in that Ben Affleck was going to die. It seemed really telegraphed.
Well, sure, but in that exact way? Like in that...
No, I'm with you. I appreciate the blunt way that they did it, and the fact that he didn't have an opportunity to have like a death scene where he was dying.
Yeah, like
I appreciate that for sure.
Right, there was never a scene where he was like, "You were right, I was wrong." Like, I mean, there was a little bit where he's like, "This is on me." You know, whenever Oscar Isaac's like, "This is on me," and then Ben Affleck's like, "No, it's on me." You know, I don't know. I appreciate it though. It's a simple arc. I agree with you there. It may be, like 70 to 80 to 90% of what happens to Ben Affleck may be pretty telegraphed pretty early on. But I still found it interesting that like he was really against it. Then when they got there and he actually set his eyes on all that money, which, by the way, I think that whole sequence in the house with the money is great.
Yeah,
oh, yes.
That's my favorite segment of the movie. I thought it was actually pretty interesting.
It's so suspenseful, and it was so cool. And then like just like the switch that turns when Ben Affleck's like, we got more time. We got like 5 more minutes. We can.
Yeah, it's like
I
I factored in an extra 15 minutes, and I'm like, I don't think you did.
Yeah, like Ben Affleck, you were getting greedy. Like,
yeah,
I appreciate all of that, even though it may be obvious and it may be easy. It's not something that I was expecting based on the first 15 minutes of the movie. This is where the movie starts becoming about what it's about, and these guys have to learn through the course of their adventure to, walk the walk and don't just talk the talk. Like, they have to value human lives. Like Charlie Hunnam has that whole speech at the beginning about how you shouldn't go out there and be a mercenary, basically, because they'll have you doing morally shady stuff, and you can't turn off the darkness whenever you're done killing. Like he almost killed the guy in a grocery store because he wouldn't move his shopping cart, and et cetera, et cetera. So the idea that it deals with the value of human life, this movie that I thought was like going to be a bro fest at the beginning, right? And instead we get not a deep character study, but ultimately we get a kind of somber, slow character building action movie as opposed to like just a kill them all action movie.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching Oscar Isaac's character and Ben Affleck's
Oscar Isaac?
Yes, Oscar Isaac. All right.
Beautiful.
I enjoyed watching Oscar Isaac and Ben Affleck's characters as they kind of crossed. They crossed trajectories.
I like how they're tense with one another, but they're very respectful at all times. It's like, we gotta watch ourselves out here.
Right. Well, I kind of felt like Oscar Isaac and Ben Affleck switched places at some point. I felt like Oscar Isaac was the greedy one at the beginning, and slowly he became the one that was like, no, we shouldn't be doing it this way. We need to get rid of the money or whatever. And Ben Affleck crossed over to be this the greedy one. And the other thing, and you kind of mentioned it too, and you guys can tell me what you think, but I liked I like the idea that if the government's telling you to go out and to do these things, that's one thing. But to go out of your own volition and do these things is something almost completely different, because I guess it's almost like the government made me do this. These were my orders and I went out and did this.
It was about honor, etc.
Yeah, and you almost have an excuse, well, I did it for my country, right?
Right.
And at this point, they're doing it for money and for greed to a certain extent. And I think maybe Oscar Isaac's character is not completely doing it for greed. He wants to take out the drug cartel guy. But
yeah, because he's been he had been working there for 3 or 4 years or something like that, trying to bring this guy down.
Yeah, so I found that interesting. That morally gray area that they inhabit. But
me too, and I liked how basically the two brothers at the point whenever they realized that they would have to mow down a bunch of teenagers, they were just like, nope, we're not going to do it. We're drawing a line, a hard line. Yeah. It wasn't even a question. They all saw what happened to Ben Affleck, and they just knew they had to do better, otherwise they were going down the same road. They didn't want to lose what was left of their humanity, and they already felt bad that as many people got killed as did because of their greed,
Yeah.
The whole scene in the village I thought was really good too, where they basically had to sit down with the elders of the village and just give them a bunch of money. It doesn't make it right what they did, but what else are you going to do in that situation, Kill the whole village?
Yeah, and I guess there's a bit in that moment and with the village, there's sort of this idea of everything they're doing is for this money that's going to solve all of their problems. And this is something I found interesting thinking about throughout the movie, is how they kept talking about how after this, things were going to be the same for them. They couldn't go back to their old lives. They were going to have to do all this different stuff then. And it's interesting to me when you think that all of this money is going to solve your problems, but you're really opening up a whole new world of problems. And I think I like that the person who kills Ben Affleck is the kid with the yellow jersey.
Right. Yeah.
And that comes back, even though they think well, we've paid them all this money and it's going to be okay. But there's still all of these things that you can't compensate for everything with money.
Right. You may be able to pay off a town, right? But you can't undo the damage you do to individuals.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that.
I agree. It's it felt right, I think. A good fitting end to that character, right? And I like how Ben Affleck near the end, they could have doubled down on his evilness, which is I thought what they were going to do, right? I thought like Chris said, I thought he was going to be the problem. But instead, he has a talk with Oscar Isaac, realizes he's being a dick. Even when they're leaving the village, before that talk, he even genuinely can't look the kid in the eye, because I assume he killed his dad or his family member or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm sorry, kid, I don't know. I like dealing with the repercussions of your actions. I wish the movie had explored that more, but I think that's when the movie really comes alive, is whenever it starts mid-act 2.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And that's something I found interesting looking forward to, because I wasn't sure how much of the aftermath we were going to get, because it's a little before the halfway point of the movie when they're robbing the house, right? And
yeah,
it's around the halfway point that they've left the house. It's right after that is the middle of the movie. So I was like, well, how far are we going to go? And I found what I was looking forward to the most was seeing how are they going to deal with everything that they're doing once they get out. And I had a brief moment where I thought that might be what they were doing with Ben Affleck, was going to set him up to have to deal with all of the stuff that he's done once he gets out, and like, how is that money gonna weigh on him?
Right.
And I'm a little disappointed in where the movie ends, in that there was not a lot of follow up on that. I know that they are going to have to deal with it in the sense that they got, that Ben Affleck died and they have nothing to show for it. But I found what would come next very interesting.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's talk about the end real quick.
Yeah, I actually have. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to the same place I am, but there's a sour note at the end that I have.
For you, like a...
Okay,
Yeah,
well, let me ask you
Mike.
then. Let me just ask.
Yeah.
What do you guys take from that last scene? And I'm talking about where Charlie Hunnam gives Oscar Isaac the coordinates to the money.
Yeah, that's the sour note for me.
Really? Okay.
And the reason being is because all this money and all this greed, they had to give it up. And I feel like that's kind of the point of the movie. Like, let's get our friend home. Let's take what money we can, and let's get rid of the rest of the money.
But that encapsulates the whole journey for his character, because it puts the ball in his court.
Now that he has the coordinates.
Right, like Charlie Hunnam wasn't like, I've got the coordinates too. He has them written down on a single piece of paper, and he's not like, I'm going to get my share now with my brother. See ya, here's yours if you ever want to go get it yourself. He's like, here it is, bro.
Right.
And then Charlie Hunnam walks away, giving the implication that he and his brother have already decided that this money, if they take it, they lose their humanity.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
And if Oscar Isaac takes that money as well, he goes to get it, he'll have learned nothing.
Okay.
That's why they all give their money away to Ben Affleck's daughter, who didn't even give a shit about Ben Affleck, is because that's like the most selfless thing they could have done. Because if they live and benefit and profit off of any of this money that they killed all these people for, then they're dirtbags.
So it's more of a reminder as opposed to... So I took it as, here you go, and in 5 years, let's go get this kind of thing.
It could be that. It could be that. But I didn't get that because Charlie Hunnam wasn't like, wink, wink. He was just like, here it is, man. It's there if you want it. Bye.
Yeah.
And giving the implication that they're not going to go seek the money. They're the first ones to walk away from the money. Oscar Isaac was the one of all of them left alive who was the least sure that they should give away the money. The two brothers do it right off the bat as soon as they're in that meeting. And they're the ones who were like, I'm not going to kill a bunch of kids. We're leaving.
I'm with you on the meaning of that and that being good. I'm also kind of understanding of where Chris is coming from, because I remember the moment having that tone of like, oh, look, I wrote down the coordinates, so that money is still able to be got.
Yeah.
I don't know that it fully goes in like the whole 9 yards into what you're talking about, Mike, because I did get that uplifting tone, but I don't know if that's like intentionally like misleading you.
Well, I also think it could be like a take from it what you will,
right?
Kind of scene.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, it wasn't like he looked at it, smiled, and then Metallica kicked on again. Cut to black. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like that, at least.
Right. Yeah.
I like your take on it better than mine, for sure.
Me too.
I like the Metallica kicks in take, or Pantera's walk again. I'm okay with that.
Cut the black, smile.
Yeah.
I think my favorite shot of the movie is when the donkey falls.
Yes.
And the bag of money explodes open, and you see all that money scattered in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like the shot of it just lingering while all that money is just trickling down, just like completely wasted. I like it. It was a good shot.
And then Oscar Isaac's like, a donkey just died.
Oh, yeah, that was dumb.
upset.
Yeah, that was dumb. He's like, are you kidding me? That's a donkey. That's a living animal. And it's like, bro, let's cool it with that a little bit.
Yeah, that might have been a bit much for me.
Yeah, but other than that, that was like, you're not upset about that donkey, Oscar Isaac. Shut up.
I'm wondering, how do you guys feel about the point that I think the movie tries to make a couple of different times, how severely undercompensated soldiers in the military are by the government?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there you go. There's a social statement.
Yeah, it is a social statement. Do you feel like they leaned into it the right amount, or do you think they should have been a bit more
Yeah, I think it was
poignant
the
with
right
it?
amount. I don't think the movie needs to hearken on it. I mean, that's not something I think that most people like don't already think or agree with, right? So it seems like
Yeah, it's an easy win.
yeah, that's like a movie about cops, and then like you have like the scene where like the cop is like being racist or doing something racist or something like that, and you're like, oh, I don't like that, you know?
Yeah, it's enough to show the motivation for the characters, right?
Right. Well, it just seems like just show the motivation for the characters, put it in there, but don't hearken on it, because like there are a million other movies that make that exact same point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to spend 15 minutes making that point when all we need to know is that Ben Affleck's an ex-soldier and he can't afford to raise his family.
And that's kind of what I found interesting a lot, you know, and I talked about it, but is the set of skills that they have no use for in any other business. You know, they can't go anywhere else and use those set of skills unless they use it for themselves, you know. I found that interesting, you know, like any other job, Oscar Isaac says, and we would make it, we would have a pension, you know, we would be, because we're the best at what we do. And I found that part of it interesting, but that these skills that they learn are basically completely useless in civilian life.
Right. Like we ask so much of them. And then whenever we don't need them to kill for us anymore, it's like we're just like, well, you know, just go back to not causing any trouble, you know?
Yeah. Go
and
sell
like,
condos.
They can't do that. So I agree.
I like that it ends up being a backdrop and not like the theme of the movie. So I think we're all in agreement there.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think the Triple Frontier name means? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? If we talked about it earlier, so we better.
I thought about this a little bit, but not
Google it.
enough to come up with anything. Like, is it the home front? You know, like a civilian life.
I'm Googling it now. Triple Frontier meaning. Let's see. Oh, okay.
Well,
here we go.
Wait. That just doesn't say what he thinks it is.
Just say what I think.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a actual military tactical sort of term for this, but my Triple Frontier that they were fighting on, trying to get the money, like the money heist, also stopping the drug lords, and then also fulfilling this sort of need. And basically, like you said, Chris, they have these skills they can't use anywhere else, but like fulfilling having to use these skills that they were taught to do by the military. That I don't know that means anything or matters, but that's where I came down. I was like, why is it called Triple Frontier? It's like, oh, they're kind of doing three different things.
Okay.
All right, Mike.
Okay, so the Triple Frontier is a place. It is a tri-border area along the junction of Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil.
Oh,
okay.
Well, that
so
makes
it's a
sense.
location then.
Where the Iguazu and Parana rivers converge.
It's much more literal than I was thinking.
Yeah, I like mine better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it could be a double meaning
There you go.
or a triple meaning.
There you go.
It could be a double frontier meaning, you know? Your Triple Frontier explanation.
All right. Well, that is it that I have for this movie. What do you guys have? Anything else?
I actually like this movie a little bit better after talking to you guys about it. How do you guys feel?
Yeah, I'm still sitting at 3.5, but like I said, I could see myself rewatching this again, especially if someone who likes these kinds of movies wants to watch it. And I would much rather watch this than like Mile 22 or like
a Mark Wahlberg film,
or like a Bruce Willis
The
movie.
Shooter.
Like a Death Wish or anything. You know what I mean? Like this is better than like an action movie. And I like action movies, so I don't want to like make it sound like I'm knocking action movies, but like it's better than like your typical like brotherhood, soldiers,
lone survivor,
live together, die together kind of thing. Like it's better than that kind of thing.
Right. I'm totally with you that if someone wanted to watch it or was wanting to watch a film like this, it's one that I could recommend, you know.
This is the men on a mission movie that I would much rather see.
Right. It'd be like this and something like Three Kings.
Yeah. This kind of is more like in the Three Kings camp than it is like I'm trying to think of like a bad example. I haven't been able to yet.
Lone Survivor.
There you go. Lone Survivor or just crappy movies.
Right. I just, you know, compared to other films where I get that vibe to like, I haven't seen that in forever. I need to watch that again.
Right.
I don't know that will come up with this movie. I hope that I'm wrong because I like wanting to watch movies.
Indeed. I hear you there.
All right. So does that do it for this episode?
Yeah, I think so.
It does.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And of course, as always, thanks Jake Wagner-Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
Stay tuned to this channel, subscribe. Next week, we will be reviewing Jordan Peele's newest film, Us, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. South by Southwest has been really good reviews.
Yeah, I think it's the thing so far that we've covered in 2019 that I've been most excited about seeing. So
yeah,
I'm hyped. And if you want to send us questions to answer on the show next week about us, send those to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at casualcinecast or our email casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
See you later.